Hello, Ben Langston and Reed Bolander here with you to cover this week's presentation for PL/SQL functions. I'm going to do a quick overview and Reed's going to show you some live examples. So PL/SQL functions are self-contained programs that are designed to perform a specific task. Functions are a named PL/SQL block so they can be stored and reused. So there's two types of PL/SQL functions. There's a pass by value. These receive copies of values when they are called and return a single output variable. And then we have pass by reference. These receive reference to variables when they're called. They return a single output and the references are parameters to the function. And this is a real easy, quick breakdown of a syntax of the function. Our book has a much more complicated one. I thought I'd break it down and make it just a little simpler to look at. It is basically create or replace the function. You call a name. This can be any name you want to use here. You put your parameters in, and then you put the return data type. This top piece is what's called the header. The bottom piece is called the execution part. And then you can declare your variables here. And then you begin your execution part here. You add in some execution statements. Your return has to be of the same value, data type value as what you called up here. So if you call a number up here, you need to return a number. If you call a constant, you need to return a constant. And then you just end it. And then that would be stored, and then you could write an anonymous block later in your programming to call this actual function. All right, so that's all I have to get us started. Reed's going to go over some examples. So Reed, on to you.
Thank you, Ben. Hello, everyone. As Ben explained, we're going to be covering functions today, and I've got a couple of examples to show. So the first example right here is some code that is just a function that's just going to receive a value by value, or receive a parameter by value. It's going to return a varchar, but it's also going to receive a varchar as a parameter. And this is known, because of this in keyword here, it's known as a read-only variable because it does not modify the variable or anything that is passed in. The variable itself is not viewable to the calling code or anything like that. It's just the value is passed in and processed, and a value is returned, just a standard function. So we've got here the declaration of the function, and we've got PV name in to varchar2, return varchar2 is, and then here's the code. We declare a variable LV name to take or to be assigned this, essentially almost like a constant, but that's basically going to be used here if the value that's passed by the user is null. So if it's null, then we're going to use world instead. If it's not, we're going to use the value that was passed by the user. So I'm going to go ahead and compile this, and then we're going to call it with this. Since this is just a simple function that returns a value and it uses just parameters that are passed by value, you can use it inline in like a select statement or something. So I'll just copy both of these to show you what we get there, but nothing will surprise you probably. So in the first one, we passed in the value of Henry, and we then receive this concatenation as our return value, hello Henry. In the second one, we have hello null, or hello whom we call with the value of null passed in as a parameter, and we get hello world because of that substitution that takes place in the code. The second example is very flexible, passing a value or passing a parameter by reference. So in this code, I tried to think of a good use case, and I thought, you may want to scrub your data of some character or something. And you might want then the scrub data returned, and you also might want to know how many characters were removed. So in this case, I've got a function called remove hyphens, and believe it or not, it removes hyphens from a string. So we declare things a little bit differently because this is actually going to be a parameter that's passed by reference. So we have an in and an out, varchar2. We're returning an integer in this case because this is now a read-writable variable. that we can't just pass a value in to this thing. We have to actually pass a variable name. And the stored procedure then has the ability to modify that value or modify that variable, and it can be seen in the calling program's scope. So I don't want to get into too much detail, but basically we do some code here. Here we replace the volume, the hyphens. We store the scrubbed data in this variable. Then we see how many characters did we remove, and then we assign. This is the variable that was passed in by reference, and we assign that the variable of the value of the scrubbed variable, and we return the integer value, which tells us how many characters were actually removed from that string. So I'll go ahead and run that here, and I'll show you a few things in this code. So you see here, here's our original string that was passed in in this variable. We assigned hyphenated string, this value, and then we print out the original string using that variable name, LV hyphenated string. Then we show how many hyphens were removed by returning or printing the value that was returned by the function. And then finally, we show the new string value, which is the scrubbed value without the hyphens. And notice this is the same variable name that was passed in as a referenced parameter. So I hope this has given you a little bit of a show of the difference between the two ways to call functions, and I think it's pretty fascinating. Thanks.